you know, excited that we've got so many people interested in learning more about them, especially realtors, because I know that you guys are the first person usually that your clients are going to talk to when they want to know about ADUs. And so I'm really excited about arming you with great information so that you can help educate your clients and help steer them in the right direction. So let's see. Looks like we've got quite a crew on here today. As people have questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box, and Rita's going to help me out today with making sure that we get all of your questions answered in a timely manner. Usually we get a lot of questions. People, you know, are very curious about ADUs, and you know, we get lots of great questions that typically come out of these presentations. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. I do have a presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
And while you're pulling that up, I just want to make a quick little announcement that Florentine will actually be back on June 25th, same time, going even further into a deep dive. So I'm just excited to have you, and kick it off.
Awesome. Yeah. So on the 25th, we're actually going to be talking about how to be an ADU pro for your clients. And that really is going to be focused on, when you have a buyer who's looking to purchase a property, you know, that has an ADU, or if they're looking for a property to build an ADU, what are some of the things that you should be looking for that make that a good property? What are some of the big red flags that you should be looking out for? So those are some of the things that we'll talk about at that meeting. Also, if you're listing a property that has an ADU or has ADU potential, what are some really important things you need to be looking out for in the listing? What are some key ways to market that property so that you can get the highest value? And then when it comes to appraisals, that's a really big sticking point with ADUs. So you definitely want to know how to approach the appraiser to get the value for that ADU. It's very, very hard. If you get a poor appraisal value, it's very, very hard to go back and get that property reappraised. I'm sure our veteran agents have tried to do that in the past, and very, very challenging. So we need to make sure that we get that value for that ADU out the gate, and appraisers are really all over the map. So very, very important information. You definitely don't want to get a no value for an ADU that your client has spent good money to build, right? So I can definitely help you guys with that. So that'll be on the 25th. We're going to start today with just talking about legislative updates, because there's a lot of them and they definitely impact clients. We'll go into a few other things as well a little bit later in the presentation, but this is mostly targeted at what are the legal updates? What are the things that your clients can do that they couldn't do, you know, 6 months ago? All right, so I am going to do a screen share here. I do have a planned presentation, and also have some web resources that we'll kick off with. So let me just get this so that we can see it on the full screen here. There's our presentation. Are you guys all seeing Sidekick Homes on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, so basically, you know, Sidekick Homes is a company that I founded to help overcome the housing crisis by putting extra homes in people's backyards, and we call them sidekicks. We are able to help clients from beginning to end. So people say, you know, Florentine, you got a lot of great information, but what can you do for my client? We can go on site, we can consult your client, we can tell them exactly what they're able to build. We can put together an estimate for them to do the design work, and then we can also build it for them as well. So I'll talk in a little bit greater detail about when you're guiding a client, whether you use Sidekick or another company, what are some really important things that you ought to look for to help guide your clients. You know, a lot of people are learning the hard way about if you don't have the people with right qualifications on your team, what some of the challenges can end up being down the road. So anyway, we're just there to help the client every step of the way and make sure that they have a successful project. So this is me. A lot of people know me from being in real estate. I was a former team leader to Keller Williams Market Center, but I really got my roots in construction. I got started in construction. I was 14 years old. And by the time I was 18, I had experience, doing everything from foundations to final finishes on a property. So I know a little bit about construction. I'm not a general contractor myself, but it is my roots. It's what I was brought up with, and happy to be returning to my roots with this ADU endeavor. So let's just all, before we get into the legal landscape, let's just have a quick conversation about what an ADU is and what an ADU is not. when these tiny homes packages first came out on, let's go back. Came out on Amazon, I had about 5 different friends email me and say, hey, Florentine, check this out. Is this the business you're in? And this is not the business I'm in. We build accessory dwelling units, which are actual housing, habitable housing that people can live in. It's more like custom home building than it is, you know, this $7,200 flat pack that you're going to get on Amazon. I tell people when you buy a tiny house kit on Amazon, you're going to get a flat pack of pre-cut lumber and some screws, and basically be able to build yourself a glorified shed in your backyard. But that's not a habitable dwelling unit. There are also other additional accessory units, such as office, pool house, guest house, yoga studio, that in a lot of cities people can build in their house, but they're not an accessory dwelling unit. So we got to keep those two little bit distinguished here. There's all of these great laws that apply to accessory dwelling units, but we have to know what we're defining as an accessory dwelling unit to be able to take advantage of all these wonderful laws. So in a nutshell, if you look at number 3 here, this gives us our parameters around an accessory dwelling unit, but essentially it needs to have its own kitchen, its own bathroom, its own sleeping quarters, and a separate entrance. So those are the things that an ADU must have. So if it's a guest house, awesome, it's a guest house. We just don't call it an ADU if it doesn't have all 4 of those things. And I'm sure you guys have all seen this by now, but accessory dwelling units can come in many different shapes and sizes. They can come as a converted garage. That's actually the most popular. They can be a detached ADU, whether converted from an existing structure or a new built structure. They can be prefab, they can be built on site. And then there's attached ADUs that can be attached to the main structure. They can be attached to an accessory building, such as a garage. And then you can also build out space within an existing house. So you can take a house and basically turn it into 2 separate houses. And that would be converting a portion of the existing space. So there's a lot of different ways that we can configure these ADUs. Now let's just look at for a second at the legislative landscape. You don't need to memorize any of this. I just want to demonstrate for you the complexity right now of the ADU world. When we talk about what somebody can do with their property, what we're looking at is the who defines what somebody can do with their property. There's a lot of people that have their hands in this, right? So this is the state mandate. What does the government code say about ADUs? This is local city ordinances. Some cities have them, some cities don't. This is local zoning and land use code that the city planning department governs. This is the state building code. It's also our local building code. Fire safety, so the fire marshal and local fire departments have a bit of the say-so. And what can be built, the utility companies, especially if there are utility easements or power poles on a property. The utility companies can be involved in what you can do or not do on a property. And then depending on how your client wants to utilize their unit, are they wanting to rent it out? Are they wanting to have a family member live there? Are they wanting to do a short-term rental? There's also governing bodies for that as well. So there's a lot of different, when I go to research a property for a client and I'm looking at, well, what can we do on this property? It's not like you can just go to one place to determine what you can do. And then furthermore, a lot of times when you go to all of these different places to gather your information, sometimes you get conflicting standards and you have to know what trumps what. So this is what the state says. This is what the city says. This is what, my local building department says. What do you do? And I get, calls from people all the time that are saying, well, the city planning department saying this and the city inspector saying that, but I read the state law says, and so there's a lot of information coming from a lot of different sources. And so we need to be able to tease all of that out. Today, we're going to be focused on the state mandate. That's the big thing that I want for you guys to really understand is the state mandate and how does that interplay with the local city that you're looking at. And so the big thing to kind of help simplify it, this is the big thing. So if you're tuning in and out, tune in for this moment. This is really important distinction. The state mandate on accessory dwelling units governs local municipalities. It does not govern homeowners. Okay, so the state is not saying, hey, homeowner, here's what you can build or not build. The state is saying, hey, local city or county planning department, here's how you must handle a homeowner's request to build an ADU. The state says, you local city or county, you can have an ordinance. And if you have an ordinance, these are the things you get to control. And the ordinance has to meet certain parameters and criteria. It will also say, local cities and counties, if you do not have an ordinance, here are the standards that a homeowner can build to. So just because you don't have an ordinance doesn't mean they can build. They can build, and actually they can build the even probably more lenient standards than what a city would probably come up with. And then there's all kinds of rules. You know, if a city has an ordinance, but that ordinance does not meet the state law, guess what? The whole entire ordinance is null and void. So that's a really important distinction. A lot of times cities have ordinances on the books, but those ordinances do not meet the 2020 standards, which we're going to be talking about today. After today's course, you guys are going to walk out of here probably more knowledgeable than a lot of city planning departments. And trust me, I know, because I work with a lot of the city planning departments, and they've got a lot of details they have to keep track of, so I give them huge kudos. But a lot of times they miss some of the details when it comes to accessory dwelling units. So we're going to cover those so that you know, we can really advocate for our clients.
And Florentine, before you go into your next slide, I've had several people reach out. They want to know, are you going to share your slides?
I am happy to share my slides. I just need your contact information. Perfect. So I'll show you a little bit later. Yes, I will share the slides. You don't have to write all of this stuff down. I'll give you a copy of this so you guys all have this information. And if you just want to, I'll show you in a little bit. You can go to my website and just fill in a form so I have your contact information, and then I'll get all of this out. And it helps me if we do it that way, because I can send it to everybody all at one time.
It's all organized.
Yeah, and everybody always wants these slides. I usually, when I do this class live, I say, hey, at the end, give me your business card, and I'll send you all this information. And I get cards from every single person in the room. So I know this is, you know, information that people want to be able to reference.
Sure. And just so everybody knows, we are recording this, and this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well. And then kind of segueing back to like regulatory, we have a question in here. What about laundry? I understand that this is another must-have for ADUs, or does it depend on the city that you are in?
Do you know, I haven't seen a city ordinance yet that requires laundry. So if you're seeing that, let me know. But so far, no, laundry is not required. I always recommend it, but not necessarily required. And in fact, for some properties, they'll end up doing shared laundry, especially multi-unit properties or properties where they're building more than one ADU. Sometimes it's easier just to have a shared facility for 2 or 3 households to share in the laundry facility. So it does not necessarily have to be laundry within the accessory dwelling unit. No, that's not part of the state mandate. But again, could be a local ordinance, and I'd be happy to take a look at that. I have, you know, I have done, I've consulted with clients in pretty much every city in the South Bay. So I've seen all of their ordinances. I've seen who has ordinances and who doesn't have ordinances. And that's always changing on a daily basis, by the way. When the new law went into place in January, a lot of cities that had ordinances were scrambling to update their ordinances because their old ordinances were null and void, and they didn't want to fall into these big, broad parameters that the state allows. And so they were in a scramble. So a lot of local cities are in the process of putting an ordinance in place. Some have ordinances, some have urgency ordinances. It's like a temporary measure until they get a more permanent ordinance. So everyone's in a little bit different state of flux. And then of course, March, COVID happened. And so, you know, a lot of planning commissions that were meeting and that were getting ready to pass something haven't been meeting. And so everything's been a little bit delayed. But whenever we have a project upcoming in a city, we're always keeping tabs on exactly where they are and what the dates are of upcoming meetings, et cetera, so that we know what criteria our clients are able to build to.
And then I got another question for you. How long does it take to pull complete approved ADU plans?
That's a fantastic question. And that's going to vary from city to city. We'll get into this in our slides here in a minute, but the state says that they've got 60 days to approve plans. However, in practice, we're finding that there's a lot of sneaky things that local planning departments can do that can cause it to be much longer than that. So and the other thing is, just so you guys know, we do have really good legal backing. You know, I've got great relationships with a lot of the big players in the industry, with people at the State Department of Housing, as well as Californians for Homeownerships is the nonprofit organization that is funded and sponsored by CAR, that is in place to basically help through legal means to help planning departments to follow the state rules. And so this right now, the 60-day limit is not something they're trying to pursue. They've got a lot more pressing issues. So while the state says they have 60 days to approve plans, FYI, it can take a little bit longer. It takes us about 4 to 6 weeks to get plans, you know, created, approved by the client, and through engineering and Title 24. So it's 4 to 6 weeks up front. After that, you know, we do our best to try and get those plans approved through the city. But it's like I say, it's out of our, that's the portion of time where it's out of our hands. So yeah, if it takes extraordinarily long, if they're requiring things that are just really outside of the norm, we probably can get some legal backup for that. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question. This isn't something that's going to go in overnight. I tell people, you know, I used to say, give yourself 6 to 9 months, and now I'm telling people, give yourself 9 to 12 months, just because with COVID, it is slowing things down. Every planning department right now is operating a little bit differently. Most are operating remotely. There are a couple of planning departments that just are not open. We can't reach them. City of Inglewood is one. They're not responding to us. So it's different with every city, but that's what we're here for. We can help you make it through that process and work with the planning department on their ever-changing terms as we move through, this COVID uncertainty.
Perfect. And then I've got a couple more for you. These, like I said, this is a hot topic. How about the City of Los Angeles DWP issues? I heard that DWP takes 4 to 6 weeks to get back to you.
So here's the thing with DWP. Most plans are not going to have to go through DWP for approval. That's going to, it's going to probably be 20 to 25%. And it's usually going to be related to the way you can tell is there a utility easement on the property, or is there a power pole within about 10 feet of where you want to build the ADU? That's typically what's going to trigger the plans to get sent over to DWP for approval. And 4 to 6 weeks is not bad, because last year it was over 6 months. It was like, we were telling people it was 4 to 6 months that it was taking DWP. So as these new laws were going into place, what happened is DWP staffed up. They were very, very far behind. It doesn't take them a lot of time to approve. They were just really backlogged. So they're properly staffed now, and they're on top of things. So yeah, so not a huge problem, but for some properties it will take a little bit extra, little bit extra dotting I's and crossing the T's that we have to go through.
Okay. And then kind of segueing back to that laundry question, that person asked, is it specific for the City of Inglewood? Do you happen to know if they require laundry in the ADUs for Inglewood?
You know what? The last I've checked with City of Inglewood, on their ordinance, they did not have an ordinance that met the standards, that met the state standards. So when we've submitted to City of Inglewood, it's just been to the state standards. Has that changed in the last 2 months? It might have. I'd have to go back and check and see if they have an ordinance that actually complies with state law.
Okay. And then when you mention that time frame where you're telling clients 9 to 12 months, is that from beginning to end?
That's beginning to end. Yeah. So that's from, you've signed your design consult with us, your design proposal. We come in, we take our measurements, we sit down with the whole design construction team. We put your plans together, get them submitted, get them back, and then go into construction. I used to be able to say that we could get a garage conversion done within 2 to 3 months on the construction end, right? Like once we have permits, we could get it done that quickly. What's happened with COVID is that there are a lot more requirements for construction. So we have to A lot of times, depending on the city again, right? Every city is different, but a lot of cities, we can't have more than 2 people on the job site at the same time. So we can't bring all of our crews in at the same time. We have to have one trade in at a time. Some of the inspection departments are operating a little bit funny. So sometimes we're waiting on inspections. It also has interrupted supply chains. Not so, we're pretty much back on track now, but for about the first month, we were finding things like we couldn't get vinyl from China. So our window manufacturers were like 6 to 8 weeks back ordered because they couldn't get the vinyl from China because 50% of manufacturing in China was shut down. You know, we had a drywall supplier who shut down, a doors supplier who shut down. So during COVID, which we're hearing might go on until 2021 now, there could potentially be supply chain issues that can slow things down. And that's why I say the 6 to 9 months, because it's just changed how we're able to do construction now. So that's the 6 to 9 months total for the whole project. We're giving our projects on the construction side 3 to 6 months to get those done.
Yeah, nobody planned for a pandemic.
No one planned. What can we do? But projects are all still moving forward. As long as the planning departments respond to us, projects are still moving forward. And so that's the good news. Yeah. And I think it's really made a case for people. And I want to get into these what's new in 2020. So we have a lot to cover here. But I think it's really made a case for people to have that additional income, especially for homeowners who maybe don't have investment properties, to have that additional income right now, so that they are more resilient during times like these, during a time like a pandemic that might affect people's income and employment. I think people are also looking at use of space now that they're home and their kids are home and everyone's trying to work and go to school all under one roof. People are looking at space a little bit differently and how nice it might be to have additional space that's a little bit separate from the main house. And then also unfortunately, with a lot of the hotspots, the COVID hotspots being in senior living places, right? People are wanting their parents closer to home. They don't want to put their parents in a senior living facility if there's going to be a higher risk of them getting sick. And so I think that people are also looking at creating space on their properties for their family to be able to have that multi-generational living.
Sure. We're going to let you keep rolling through here. Everybody, just keep putting your questions into the Q&A, and I promise we will get to them.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So let's first talk about owner occupancy. And again, everything we're going through today this is what the state is saying local governments can and can't do. Okay. So when it comes to owner occupancy, the state is saying you cannot have an owner occupancy requirement for an ADU. So that really opened things up for investors. Now that portion of the ADU law is only in place for the next 5 years, after which time some cities will continue to allow people to build if it's not owner occupied. Other cities we know have already written it into the ordinance that come January 1st, 2025, that's changing. So just so you know, this might be a limited opportunity in some areas, but for the next 5 years, no owner occupancy requirement. Owner occupancy is required for a junior ADU, and we're going to talk in a minute about a junior ADU, but it is required for junior ADU throughout the whole entire state. That's actually state law. The types of zonings that allow for an ADU is predominantly residential. So if it's zoned for residential use, whether single family or multifamily, you can build an ADU. I do want to point out that the guidelines for multifamily and single family are different, and we have to think about it differently than we think about it in real estate, because these laws were not written by realtors, and so it's a little bit different than how we quantify things. So normally when we think of multifamily, we think of a property that is zoned for multifamily. The ADU law doesn't necessarily care about if it's zoned R1 or R2 or R3. The rules that are different between single family and multifamily have to do with the buildings that are on the property. So if a property is zoned R2 and there is a single family residence on it, then the single family residence guidelines apply to that property. Okay. And the other really interesting thing is that in order for a property to fall under the multifamily requirements, those multi-dwellings have to be in the same building. So if you have a duplex with 2 units combined, that's considered multifamily for the purposes of ADU law. If you have 2 separate single units that are detached on a property, you still have to follow the single family requirement or the single family parameters for ADUs. So it gets really confusing, I know, a lot of times for people, but that's the way that it is. So keep that in mind as we're talking about some of the differences between multifamily and single family here.
And Florentine, I have a perfect question example for you for this one. So Doug asks, I have a duplex where one of the units is roughly 900 square feet. It's on top of the 3-car garage. Can I convert the garage into an ADU, effectively creating a triplex?
Possibly, yes. And was that Doug? Doug, we're going to talk here in a minute. So that property currently has 2 units. Oh, wait a second. It currently has 2 units, but they're detached from each other.
We'll have to, Doug, follow up on that question.
All right. So I have to talk to you.
Yeah, the duplex is detached.
Okay. If they're detached from each other, it'll be treated like a single family, and yes, you could convert the garage. If the other unit was also attached, so let's say you've got 2 units plus the garage, not only could you convert the garage, but you could also add 2 additional detached units if there was space on the property. I know, we haven't gotten to that slide yet. So what can be built on a lot? Leading us, here you go, Doug. So for us, let's start with single family. For a single family property, you can potentially build 1 ADU and 1 junior ADU. Let's talk for a minute about junior ADUs. There's a lot of people out there that are providing a little bit of misinformation about junior ADUs and saying, oh, it's just under 500 square feet. It's within the existing footprint of the house, but it's basically an ADU. So you can basically have a 3-unit property on your property. There's some really important things as realtors that I think that you guys are going to really key in on when it comes to junior accessory dwelling units that are really important to pay attention to. So yes, a junior accessory dwelling unit has to be within the existing structure of the main house. It's not an addition and it's not a separate unit. It cannot be in a detached garage. It can be in an attached garage, but it has to be in an existing unit that's part of the main dwelling. A junior accessory dwelling unit, though, the property does have to be owner occupied, and you will be required to file a deed restriction that will go on title, requiring it to be owner occupied, and that runs with the land. So that means when this property owner, if they may be owner occupying now, but if they're planning to move out in a few years, they may have to revert that property back to a, they may have to revert it back to a non-JADU, right? It also, when you go to sell, think about this. If you go to sell this property, now all of a sudden you're forced to sell this property to somebody who wants to own or occupy. It's going to get tied up with their lending, etc. So that's going to, let me turn off my phone. Can you guys hear a little beeping in the background? Yeah, sorry about that. Let me turn the phone off here.
This is called working from home, everybody.
That's great. Yeah.
Sure, my dogs are going to bark any minute now.
I know, right? I know. I've got 2 dogs. Unfortunately, I had to find dog sitters just for this meeting, you know, because I know the mailman's going to come like midway through this session. So sorry about that. My phone's trying to turn off. It's trying really hard to turn off. Okay, hold on. Gotta make sure that's not going to happen again. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we talked about junior ADU. So really important to caution your clients about this junior ADU. A lot of people have this idea, I'm going to turn my property into a triplex, but almost nobody, just so you guys know, almost nobody builds junior ADUs. They make sense for some people in some situations, but it's not turning your property into a triplex. There's definitely more to it than that. People really need to be educated on a junior ADU. Just so you know, I mean, we just got a deed restriction back from City of Hermosa Beach, right? And they mistakenly did it we're building an ADU. They mistakenly wrote it up for a junior ADU. That's okay. We're getting that fixed. However, one of the stipulations it says is that the community development director at any time can request to come onto your property and make sure that you're meeting the deed restriction, basically making sure you're owner occupying that property. So you know, it's kind of not to be messed with in some of these cities in trying to think you're going to scoot by and have this thing not be owner occupied when you're saying in the deed restriction that it should be. All right, so that's enough about junior ADU. I'll get off the soapbox on that one. Let's talk about multifamily, because this is what's really exciting. This is just as of this year, and investors are going bananas right now. If you have investors with multifamily properties, probably the best investment play they can make right now is to see if they can either add an ADU or convert space on their property to an ADU. So if you have a multifamily structure, and this is 2 or more units that are attached in a single dwelling property, right? You can add up to 2 detached ADUs on that property, which is fantastic news. And there's parameters around that. There's height restrictions and setbacks and whatnot. So there's requirements around that, but you can potentially build up to 2 additional detached units. And in addition to that, you can build out existing non-inhabited space, such as a garage, a storage room, a laundry facility, etc. In addition. And so you can build up to one, you can build at least 1 from existing space and up to 25% of the total unit count on the property. Okay, so what does that mean? This sounds a little confusing. Stick with me. So if we've got an 8-plex, 25% of 8 is 2. So that means you could potentially, if you've got 8 garage stalls, you could potentially take those 8 garage stalls and turn it into 2 units. And you could have 2 additional detached units on the lot. So you could potentially take that 8-unit property and turn it into a 12-unit property. That's pretty cool. So things have really, really opened up for multifamily in terms of what we can do. That's probably the biggest right there with investors in wanting to see how they can max out their space. Let's talk about sizes. It does vary by jurisdiction, how big you can build. And it gets a little bit complex, but we can help sort this out for your clients. But here's what it is in a nutshell. A local ordinance, if there's a local ordinance in place, they can limit the size of an ADU. However, they cannot set a maximum size for an ADU to be less than 850 square feet if it is a studio or 1-bedroom, or 1,000 square feet for a 2-bedroom or more. Okay, so they can't have a max limit of 600 square feet. If that's what the local city's ordinance says, then it's an out-of-date ordinance. And then if no city ordinance exists, or if the city's ordinance is not in compliance, then that means that a homeowner can build up to 1,200 square feet, because that's what the state allows. And that's 1,200 per ADU. So if it's a property that allows for multiple ADUs, such as a multifamily property, each of those ADUs could potentially be up to 1,200 square feet. We're not finding too many lots that have enough room to build a whole bunch of gigantic ADUs on them, but technically that's what the law allows. And then for junior ADU, remember a junior ADU is up to 500 square feet, and that's within the existing footprint. Let's talk for a minute about some limitations based on size of existing home, lot size, lot coverage, floor area ratio, etc. The cities can create limitations. They cannot create a limitation on lot size. So I've seen properties as small as 2,800 square feet, converting a garage into an ADU. So it's possible now. Also, if the project is, we'll just go up to here. If the project is less than 800 square feet, irregardless of floor area ratio, lot coverage, open space requirements, etc., a homeowner gets to build their 800 square foot ADU. Okay, so really these extra parameters that a city government could impose really are only for ADUs that are over 800 square feet. For an attached ADU, so you're attaching the ADU to the main house, there is a further limitation, and this is a state law limitation, that the ADU is limited to 50% of the total square footage of the main house. So that's the only limitation. If it's detached, though, there is no 50% of the main house limitation. It cannot be based on the size of the main house, in fact. So that's something that's really important to keep in mind. And I've seen designers get this. I mean, there was a designer actually we were talking to do some design work for a company, and they had done, I don't know, 2 or 3 dozen ADU projects. So we thought they really know their stuff. Well, they were requiring, even for detached properties, they were requiring that it only be 50% of the main house. So what they were doing is, for small houses, they were requiring people to add on to the main house in order to build the ADU, which was costing homeowners tens of thousands of dollars unnecessarily, you know, because they just didn't know the laws.
And
all right, let's talk about, yeah.
Quick question for you in your little math segment there. I have Tony asking, so an 8-unit multi-unit is 25% is 2 units. Shouldn't it be 10?
Yeah, so 10 would be the, so let's go back to that slide for a second. All right. We're here. Okay. So if you have an 8-unit property, you can add 2 additional units within the existing, within existing structures, right? So yes, then it would increase to 10. In addition to that, you can also build 2 detached ADUs. So you can build 2 detached ADUs on any multifamily, whether it's a 2-unit or a 200-unit. You always get your 2 detached. Does it make sense? Hopefully that answered Tony's question. All right, we get it. I wish I could see you, Tony. I wish I could see you nodding your head. Yeah, we got it answered for you. You know, unfortunately, we don't have that luxury here.
He said thank you, so I think we're good.
Okay, good. Okay, good. If not, we can come back and hit that. All right. Let's talk about parking for a minute. In almost all cases, parking will not be required for the ADU. There's a number of, you know, the law does say that typically you're going to need at least 1 parking unit per ADU per bedroom. However, there's exceptions to that rule. And the biggest exception that most properties qualify under is that if you're within a ½ a mile walking distance of public transportation, you don't need a parking space for your ADU. And for properties that don't meet that requirement, that's okay. We probably have some other ways that we can get around parking requirement. What about, though, if we're eliminating parking? Parking that's not for the ADU, but parking for the main house. Then what happens? Well, as of 2020, replacement parking is not required when we convert a garage to an ADU, or when we remove a garage so that we can build an ADU. So if you tear down the garage and you build a new ADU in its place, you do not have to replace that parking, which is this, yay, I know, this was something that really prevented a lot of people from being able to build. So really good news. HOAs can no longer prohibit ADUs from being built, whereas they could a year before. So this is huge news. Homeowners associations have to allow for the building of ADUs. Now, I will say this. People raise all kinds of questions. What about, you know, if it's a townhouse or a condo where you have units that are all attached to one another? This really is referring more to your HOAs where you have single family standalone units. So it's not saying that you can build on the land that is jointly held within an HOA community. So, all right, so let's talk about side and rear setback requirements for a moment. Basically, side and rear setback requirements, the city cannot require them to be any more than 4 feet, which is fantastic. So we've got a lot of space. So even properties where maybe the rear setback is 15 feet based on the local zoning, for an ADU, it can be no more than 4. And so this is where the parking and the setbacks are where some properties, for example, we see it often where properties owned R2, R3, and there's a single property on it, and they haven't been able to build those additional units because it's not going to make sense within the existing setback requirements or parking requirements. Well, now they can just build it as an ADU. They can build it as an ADU because ADUs don't have the same requirements as that typical second unit. And so sometimes when I'm looking at a property that's zoned multifamily and helping somebody tease out what are all of my options, you know, is it worth it to build a second unit so that we can then add more ADUs? Do we just do the ADU? There's a lot of different things that we have to look at to weigh the pros and cons of the second unit you want to build. Are we calling it an ADU or are we just calling it a second unit? And setbacks are one of those big considerations.
And do you happen to know specifically what the rule is for the setbacks in Manhattan Beach?
We just did a project in Manhattan Beach. It's going to depend. I think it's going to, so if I recall directly, and just so you guys know, I'm not necessarily a walking encyclopedia on every single city. So if you email me, I could definitely give you that information. I know that it can't be more than 4 feet. I think there might be some properties on Manhattan Beach where the property sizes are if it's basically smaller than 40 feet wide, like let's say it's 30 feet wide, I think the setback would be 3 feet. I think it's like no more than 10% on each side. So I believe that's what it is. But if you send me an email, I can get back to you with that for sure. I've got all of that info. We store all of the local ordinance information, so I've got it somewhere. But I don't want to misspeak and you know, provide information and then it's wrong and I missed the boat on that. So. Oh, and then if you have, let's say you want to convert a garage and that garage is on the property line or it's within the like it's only 2 feet from the property line, you can still convert it even though it's not the full setback distance. So there actually is a project, there's a project in Manhattan Beach with a realtor that we're working on. It had been converted without permit. So now we need to go back and get it permitted. And the realtor was really concerned because it's only 3 feet from the property line. But because it's an existing structure, we don't have to worry about that requirement. So we're going to be good to go on that. All right. And then let's say you have a garage that is, if you have a garage that's 2 feet from the property line, if you demolish it and rebuild in the exact same footprint, you can keep it in the same location. You don't have to come in the 4 feet. However, if you demolish it and you want to build something bigger, you will have to honor the 4 feet setback. But in truth, 4 feet's not a lot. And sometimes I like having a little bit of room between the property lines so we can put windows in and get a little bit of extra light. So setbacks are not a big deal, to be honest, unless you're on a really tiny property where a larger setback could preclude you from building. All right, so we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, that planning departments have 60 days to approve plans. If they do not have a local ordinance and they do not act within 60 days, the state law says that the plans are deemed approved. That is not the current language if the city does have an ordinance and they don't act within 60 days. In that case, there actually is a law that will probably go into place within the next year that will have that same language, whether they have an ordinance or not. So it was just something that kind of needs to get cleaned up. It was missed when legislators were writing up the bill. Again, it's going to be tricky to enforce this because there's a lot of language reasons and ways that planning departments can kind of stretch this time out. But that is what the state law says and what we typically are driving for when we're going through the permitting process. Development and impact fees. So this is an area, you know, if you're in a city like LA, they're not huge, but some cities, they were really high. I know Pasadena had a development fee for ADUs specifically that was just $20,000 out the gate. If you want to build an ADU, $20,000 development fee. And so basically you can build up to 750 square feet and not pay any development and impact fees. And these are things like your, you know, a lot of times there'll be a development fee for sewer and these types of things. If it's larger than 750, the fees are proportional to the property. So they're still not the full fee. You still get a break on that. And one thing that the jury's still out on right now is school fees. So, and school fees can pretty much double your permitting costs. I mean, they can actually be pretty high. Where the state stands on this right now is that the school fees are a development fee, and as long as the property, the ADU is less than 750 square feet, you don't pay the school fee. However, a lot of cities, it's over 500 square feet, you pay the school fee. So what happens when you're between that bracket? Some cities, some school districts are saying, hey, our school fee is not a development fee, it doesn't count. Even though it is called a development fee, they're saying it doesn't count. So right now there's, how can I say this? We're just cautious. When we're going through this process, if there are school fees being assigned for a project that's between 500 and 750 square feet, we want to be able to push back on that. And there might be a little bit of kind of legal back and forth that might have to happen between the school district and the state at this point. It's one of those gray areas that has to get worked out in practicality. But just a heads up, for our clients, that's something that we're very much paying attention to so that we are able to push back on that. Before we go further, we covered a lot of really detailed information. Rita, I think we should hit the pause button and answer a few questions.
Perfect. That was going to be my suggestion.
Okay,
so let's go from here. Let's go. Orlando's asking, okay, are you sure?
Sorry, we just needed to check on the time real quick just to make sure that we've got plenty of time, and we do.
Absolutely. I'll keep you in line. Are you allowed to have your own electrical meter, gas meter, and address? If so, what does that process entail?
All right. So the answer is it depends. So typically, first of all, a lot of that depends on the utility company and what will the utility company do, right? Second, we have to look at what is it going to cost to separate those things out. And then third, we have to look at what does the city require or allow. And every city is a little bit different on that. So some cities will require separate metering, and some leave it up to the homeowner. Now, if the ADU is an attached ADU, or if it's within the existing footprint of the house, it does not require, or excuse me, I should say, if it's within the existing footprint of the house, it does not require to have a separate utility meters, okay? It can be tied into the main house's water, sewer, electric, etc. If it's detached, some cities are requiring that it be separate, which is substantially more cost than if you can tie into the main house. So that's gonna be city by city, unfortunately. It is substantially more cost though, I will say that. I mean, we're talking probably in the tens of thousands, you know, I don't know, it could be $20,000 more, $30,000 more. It could be substantially more if you wanna do all of your utilities separate. I can tell you what most people are doing as an answer to that question. What most people are doing is they're having the electricity submeter. So the electric company will typically the electric company only wants to do one meter drop, right? Or one electrical drop. So they're going to come out, they're going to do a meter spot, and they're going to tell you where they want to drop that electricity. Sometimes they drop it into the ADU and you bring it over to the main house. Sometimes they bring it to the main house and you have it go back to the ADU. Typically the utility company is going to want to have say so on that. But a lot of people do have a sub meter so that they can bill the electricity separate. For the water and sewer, most people are just having that, if the city allows, most people are just having the water and sewer join with the main line because it's less expensive to do it that way when it's on the customer's property. If you have to tie into the city's sewer line, a lot of times there's additional permitting and additional cost. You're having to now dig into the street. The city sewer line is typically a lot deeper, and sometimes you have to pay to have a street shut down. and traffic diverted and a human being standing there diverting traffic while you're doing the project, the cost can really be expensive to do it that way. So most people are just keeping the water and sewer. Not only that, but as a landlord, some cities actually require for the property owner or the landlord to actually pay for water, sewer, trash, just for sanitation reasons. Because, you know, there could be major damage to the property if somebody stops their water service.
Or their trash.
Or their trash or their sewer, right? Like, so yeah, so that's how that's typically being handled. And then in most cases, your ADU can and will have its own address. Some cities actually require it. It's a step in the permitting process a lot of times. I think fire departments prefer it because if there's an emergency, they can more easily locate that there's another property there if it has its own address. What was I going to, there's something I was going to say about that though. Oh, here's one, this is a little tidbit. And this is where it's really important that you have a lender that's used to working with ADUs as well. So if somebody's getting a renovation loan, even if a city requires there to be a separate address, you do not want anything on the lending paperwork for a renovation loan. So when you're sending in your construction, you know, there's different construction documentation they need to see. You don't want to have anything on your loan documents that, or anything on your construction documents that go to the lender that talk about separate address, because the lending guidelines are old and they basically say that you cannot have a separate address for some lenders. Every lender is a little bit different. So we have to be a little bit careful how we manage a project when we're doing construction and there's a renovation loan involved.
Sure. How do you determine the value on properties with ADUs?
That's a fantastic question. And what the best answer is that you have to look at comps for the property, and it can get tricky because ADUs are a fairly new thing, and there may not necessarily be properties nearby that have ADUs or that have ADUs to the size and quality level as the ADU that is on your client's property. And so appraisals are honestly the most challenging area when we're talking about value. And I'm going to be talking more about the valuation in our next in a couple of weeks. So tune in for that one. We'll take a deeper dive. But I will say, you know, as a realtor, it's going to be very, very important to be looking at comps. Even if you're having to look at comps that are a little bit further distance out or further back in time, it's going to be very, very important that you locate properties that had an ADU so that you can price it similarly. A property with an ADU does not have the same valuation as a duplex property. They are two different. They're considered different by lenders. They're considered different by appraisers, and they don't carry the same value.
Okay. Are you disclosing to property owners once they put that in? I'm assuming that was back to your junior ADU disclosure question on the deed.
And are we disclosing what to property owners?
It says, are you disclosing to property owners once they put that in? I'm assuming, Lisa, you meant that, are we disclosing it at the time of the sale? Maybe, Lisa, you could follow up on your question there for that one.
Got it.
And
yeah.
then,
and I'll just say this, Rita. So whose question was that?
Lisa.
Lisa. Okay, great. So Lisa, one thing that I will say is that it will be, if someone has a junior ADU, they should have a deed restriction recorded on title. So if you're pulling that preliminary title report, you should be able to see that on the title. So if, like, for example, if you're representing a buyer on a transaction and you want to know, you should be able to see that on the title report.
Okay. Here's a fully loaded question for you.
Okay.
As an owner-occupied front house, does the owner have to accept a qualified tenant or the ADU if the owner has his own bias not consistent with equal right housing laws?
Unfortunately, you still have to follow the equal right housing laws. Yep. So those laws are the laws. Now, what happens in practicality, I can't tell you. I mean, obviously, especially if you're going to be, I have housemates who rent rooms in my house, right? That's, you know, it's my little extra income. And I certainly am biased about the people that I'm sharing space with. And I know in people's backyards, sometimes you're sharing a yard with people, you're sharing a driveway, et cetera. What I would recommend for realtors, and I think this is something that CAR should really think about, is, there's a lot right now about tenants' rights, a lot of legal things that are being passed about tenants' rights. I really think that it's a unique situation that a homeowner's in when they are living on a property and they're renting that property out. I do think that there should be extra rights that they should have in terms of selecting. Obviously not to be discriminatory, right? Like this isn't to discriminate against protected classes of people. But if you've got kids, you may want to discriminate based on somebody's, criminal record or whatnot. So I would say, as realtors, this might be an important area that we should ask CAR to kind of push back on some of the tenant regulation. Just because I do feel for homeowners who are living in their house and want to be, as a homeowner, you can't just, if you're a tenant in a property, you can just give your notice and go find another place in 30 days. As an owner of your property, it's a little trickier than that. And so I think that you do want to have a bit more certainty about who you're sharing space with. So let's advocate. Let's send some letters to CAR and see if we can have a little bit more homeowner protection. And I have to say this too, Rita, this is honestly one of the biggest concerns that homeowners have for doing an ADU, especially as a rental. And I feel like more people would be willing to have a tenant on the backyard in their backyard in an ADU if they felt like they had just a little bit more control about who was living back there, or the capacity to have somebody evicted if they're causing a problem literally in their backyard or in their neighborhood, right? And definitely we want to protect tenants and make sure that people aren't discriminated against, et cetera. And I think that it would do a lot to get more housing built if homeowners could also feel comfortable, about their rights as well when they have someone sharing a property with them.
Okay. When 2025 arrives, ADUs that were owner occupied compliant before doesn't change to required owner occupancy, correct?
That is correct. So the way that the state law reads is basically that it's based on permitting. So owner occupancy is not a requirement for permitting a property. So a city should not be requiring that after 2025 that property somehow goes back and now has to be owner occupied. Yeah.
Can junior ADU be a conversion of home instead of an addition to the home?
Yes, a junior ADU has to be conversion of existing space. It cannot be an addition of new square footage. There sometimes, if you wanted to work around that, the workaround, if you wanted to add space, would be a two-step permitting process where you would add a family room or a very large, like master bedroom suite, and then call it a junior ADU. But I'm going to be honest, Rita, I feel like there's a lot easier ways. If you really want to have a separate space with its own kitchenette, I mean, most cities will allow you to put in a wet bar, microwave. I think there's easier ways to help clients achieve their goals without necessarily going the JADU route. I'm not as excited about JADUs as a lot of people are, just because I understand some of the restrictions on the property. And I just think there's other simpler ways to help homeowners achieve their goals for a property. And I'm happy to consult on that.
Okay, here's some more city trivia for you. The City of Carson, standard construction cost for a 750 square foot construction ADU, including permits.
All right, so here's what I'm going to do for a question like that. That's going to be called book a consultation with Florentine. And I will handle that. Anything city specific or property specific, I really recommend we do a property consultation. I'll show you in a minute. Actually, I can take a break from this real quick and just show you what my let me show you what my property report looks like, so that people get an idea when we come out what we're actually providing for the client. Let's see here.
And while you're pulling that up, I think this is a quick, easy question that you've already answered. Any lot size restrictions?
No lot size restrictions. Nope. All right, so I am going to see if I can just make this. Well, that didn't work. Okay, let's cover this. Okie dokie. So this is just a sample of a report that I would do for a client, where I really get in. I explain what rules and laws I was utilizing in doing the research for the report. We outline the specific details of that property. I will go through and tell them how many units, what can they actually build on that property. And when I do this, like I said, we looked at the beginning at all those different regulatory bodies. Sometimes I'm going in a lot of different directions to find the information to put in this report. It can be a lot of research. I mean, I've done property reports before. They're taking me, half a day to pull all of the information together. So we talk about what are the occupancy requirements, what are the lot parameters that they can build for that specific property. What are the building parameters for that property? So we get into all of that. I look specifically, there are things that I look at when I'm on site. I'm looking at access, utilities, construction considerations, things that they should either research in advance of moving forward with a project, or really consider the things that might actually impact the cost and make the cost be higher or lower. And then if there are any additional notes for that city or that are specific to that property. I then will also look up all of the local rent for that property so that they really understand, how much are the rents for studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, etc. I put a little note here that they should contact their local realtor for actual rents. So hopefully that will turn them back to you all so that they can get, when it's time to rent, they're actually getting consultation from you to get what those rents should be. But then I take that and I plug it into a calculator here. And I always tell people that these are just rough numbers for what we might typically see on a project. That's not an estimate for their exact project, but I plug in different scenarios for them, right? So that they can make a decision on. Sometimes people say, well, will it make more sense to convert a garage, or will it make more sense to do a 2 bedroom, or will it make more sense to do 2 units or 1 big unit, or what makes the most sense for my property? Well, we can run different scenarios, and I run this based on a 30-year loan at 4% interest. I utilize the rents that are up in this area. We put in kind of average, what are average construction costs for that area, and then what is the net income for that property, right? So for this property, you can see a 2 bedroom makes the most sense in terms of getting that higher net income. However, I've seen properties where garage conversion made the most sense because of the way the rents were in that area. So it's property by property, but it really helps people to make decisions, or if they want to make decisions about different types of financing, we can run different scenarios for different types of financing. So this is highly customized to the client and what they're looking to do and what options they're looking at when we run these calculations for them.
Sure. I've got a question that has come in by several people.
Oh, sorry. Let me just walk you through, get through this, and then I'll
Sure.
put this off the screen. But basically, we talk about what are cost considerations, how do you finance for ADU, what is the design build process? We walk people through that. How do you put your team together? What are some things to watch out for? And then of course, how we service their needs. So that's just an FYI of kind of what we're putting in our presentations there. All right, so back to some questions.
Sure. So this was asked actually by a couple people. So if there's an SFR and you add an ADU, is there a chance that when the owner sells that property, the new buyer, let's say it's a builder, they want to remove that ADU? Are there any type of laws? What needs to be disclosed? Are they going to have any issues with that?
No issues. They may have to go through the city and get a permit to convert it back. Like if it's an ADU and they want to change the use, they want to turn it into a garage, they'll likely just have to get a permit to change it back to a garage.
So no issues if they want to remove the structure entirely?
No issue. They may also, if that city required them to file a deed restriction against the title, they may have to also go back and have that removed. Yeah. So
Okay.
there's a way to do it, but it's not a huge issue. And
Alright.
most of these ADUs, Rita, most of them are paying for them in 5 to 7 years. So if someone's planning to live on their property for that period of time, it'll more than pay for itself. In some of the higher income areas, ADUs are actually paying for themselves within, I would say, probably about, like, I've seen it as little as 2.5 years that an ADU would pay for itself in a high rent area. So they're for someone looking for a long-term play, they're an absolute no-brainer. For somebody looking for, hey, I want to flip a property, I feel like it's a bit of a risk because we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the appraiser. So I don't usually recommend an ADU for a short-term play unless there's a lot of really strong recent comps that can support it. But for a long-term play, they make, I mean, think about it. If you're helping a client buy a rental property in LA County, that property is not even cash flowing for the first 5 to 7 years, probably. I mean, you're barely breaking even on it, let alone. But now if you build an ADU, it can just pay for itself entirely. That's why I say I feel like they're just the best. They're just the best for investors, for real estate investors. I feel like ADUs are the best play right now.
Yeah, and I think it's really about educating our clients. We have Sharon asking, I heard that up to 750 square foot units will not be reassessed to increase the property taxes. True or false?
All right, so basically, building an ADU does not trigger a reassessment, and I have a link that I can share with people if that's something that you guys want me to send out to you. I can send you the county assessor's link. But basically, if you go to the county assessor's FAQ link and click on new construction, it basically tells you how they assess properties. And so adding a new ADU would not trigger a reassessment. Typically, reassessment is going to be if you're renovating an existing house and you're like taking it down to the studs. Now, it will increase the dollar amount of the improvements, right? So there's actually a client that I just met with a couple days ago who they inherited the property from their grandparents who own this property forever, and they're still benefiting from not having to, from really, really, really low property taxes. And so they are really concerned about that reassessment when they build the ADU. So I sent them to the county assessor page, but pretty much it just says, you basically will pay the property tax amount based on whatever the improvement is for the property, and that's it. So basically the value of the ADU.
Okay. Development and impact fees, do they apply to all cities or just to some?
They're city by city. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're city by city, but that requirement that you can't charge them if it's less than 750 square feet, that applies to all cities. So that's statewide. Yeah.
Okay. My garage is on the side of the property line. Can I do an ADU?
Probably. Yeah, probably. Let me come do a site consultation for you, and I can tell you for certainty if you can do an ADU or not.
Perfect. Yeah. Can you add square footage to existing structure if less than 4 feet?
Okay, so let me see if I understand this question. So let's say you have a garage that's on the property line, and it's probably a 400 square foot garage that's roughly average 2-car garage size, and you want to add and make it a little bit bigger. You want to make it a 600 square foot. You can add, but the added square footage has to honor the 4-foot setback. So the existing garage can stay, but the addition has to come in 4 feet. And there was a city recently that told us, oh, if you want to add on to the garage, you actually have to move the whole structure in 4 feet, which was wrong. I'll tell you, we get a lot of really interesting requirements from cities, and I do believe that most cities really are trying to do the right thing, but they aren't always educated, and that's really where we come in to be able to advocate for the client. For example, we had a city that was requiring, the Public Works Department was requiring that we do a LID report and a soils report and drop civil plans to which would have required a site survey. And we were just converting an attached garage. So we weren't adding any new structure at all, there was really no reason to require those other than it was just on their list of requirements. And so it took me a couple of weeks of back and forth pushing back on that to have that requirement removed, because it's not related to any of the things that a city can limit or require for a homeowner. So I've seen parking restrictions that cities want to apply that we were able to push back on. In the case of the LID and soils report and survey, I mean, our client was probably looking at about $6,000 to $8,000 worth of additional reports that they would have had to have done that would have taken us several more additional weeks. That particular client is pregnant and they want to get this project completed before the baby comes. So, money aside, which $6,000 to $8,000 is a lot of money, but from a time standpoint, we didn't have time to waste on something that was just irrelevant for this project. So that's one of the big things that I think probably the greatest value that we bring to homeowners is really being able to advocate for them. Most designers that I encounter, when they approach a project like this, what they do is they go to the city, they start with the city and they say, okay, what can we build? And that's important. You need to understand from the cities. The city has all kinds of detailed nuance about what they allow and don't allow. But when it comes to ADUs, your design professional needs to know more than your city planner, because a lot of times the planning departments, the building and safety, the public works, they have a lot to keep track of. They have a lot on their plate. So kudos to them. There's a lot that they're trying to do, but they aren't always as expert on ADU. And so it's very, very important that your client has somebody advocating for them who really understands ADU law and is going to be able to save them money and allow them to build according to all these amazing state standards that we're allowed to build to. Rita, I saw this was actually several months ago. There was a client that was but they weren't our client. I was walking through their project site that was being built, and they were getting ready to install the fire sprinklers. And I thought, well, why are you putting in fire sprinklers? They're you don't have them in the main house. They shouldn't be required for your ADU, but in limited circumstances. And they said, oh, well, that's what the architect put on the plans. And then the architect said, well, that's what the city planner required. Well, bottom line is we were able to unravel that and get it removed from the plans. And the fire sprinkler company had showed up, unloaded their equipment. We had to tell them, please go home, stop the presses here. Let's figure this out. And we were able to get that removed. That saved that homeowner like $10,000 to $15,000 on a fire sprinkler system they did not need, but that the architect and the city planner didn't know to not include. So it's really important. It's the biggest thing with ADUs is making sure that your client has somebody that really understands ADUs, especially right now while everything's so new and people are still learning about all these parameters.
Sure. I'm definitely calling you if my clients want to do one. Duplex with 4,700 square foot lot and 2 single detached car garages in Hawthorne. Can they convert the garage to an ADU?
Probably. But give me a call. I definitely would love to, do a report and do some research on that. A lot of times, Rita, people will say to me, hey, Florentine, I've got this property. Can you just drive by and take a look at it? The truth of the matter is it's complicated. ADUs are very complicated. And when I go out to tell a client what they can and can't do on the property, I'm not just showing up at the property and off the top of my head telling them what they can and can't do. I'm showing up having done research specific to that property, specific to that property zoning, specific to where power and utility lines are, specific to easements, specific to what that city's local ordinance is, specific to potentially what their fire department's saying. I mean, there's a lot of nuance that goes into what you can and can't do on a property. And so when I show up to advise somebody, I'm doing that research before I show up. Similar to when, as a realtor, when you show up on a listing appointment, you don't just walk into someone's house and do a listing appointment. There's a lot of research that you're doing on that property so that you can show up and be a true advisor, an expert advisor to that client. And it's exactly the same with ADUs. It's very complicated.
Sure. Let's get to 2 more questions and then we'll get rolling on, and just keep putting your questions in here and we'll take another break. But let's answer these 2. It seemed that zoning R1 to R3, for example, in Torrance, would be no purpose or meaning as far as an ADU is concerned. Is that so?
I don't really understand the question.
Kevin, if you could come back with your question a little bit more clarified, that would be great. And then
We have a couple things about City of Torrance, though. First of all, I will tell you, City of Torrance has been very on the ball with their ADU ordinance. It's very detailed. They were on the ball before 2020, and they were on the ball with getting their 2020 ordinance in place. So it's very detailed. It's very comprehensive. A couple things that have changed previously, as of last year, they were not allowing new build ADUs in the hillside overlay, and they now are. So that was a really big change. And then there's a change with City of Torrance that we were actually, we were a little instrumental in helping. They had size limits based on number of bedrooms. So they had minimum size limits. So if you wanted a 1 bedroom, it had to be at least, I want to say it was like at least 750 square feet. If you wanted to do a 2 bedroom, it had to be at least 900 square feet. And I had a client who wanted to build something different than that. And so we did check with, I checked with some of my people in the, in the ADU world, and it did end up with an attorney advocate having a conversation with the city attorney at City of Torrance, and they actually removed that language from their ordinance. So, so that was a little bit of, we got to have our hand in impacting a little bit of the local ordinance there. So if anyone's gotten that information from City of Torrance within the last few months, FYI, it has changed recently.
Nice. And here's a quick, easy one, and then we'll continue with your slides. Do you charge a consultation fee?
I do charge a consultation fee. It's only $300. A lot of times, if you hire an architect to do like feasibility study, and we do, a lot of what would go into a normal feasibility study, it's $1,500 and on up. So $300, very affordable. And then I offer something really special for realtors and any of your clients that you refer to me. Make sure that they say that they were referred by you, because I will give them $50 off of that consultation fee. And on the invoice, I will put courtesy of, right? So it would be, courtesy of Rita. How do you say your last name? Garace?
Geraci.
Geraci. Okay. So it would be courtesy of Rita Geraci on the invoice. So it's also taking good care of you as well as their realtor. I like to know where my referrals come from, because I keep track of that in my database. And then if I ever have an ADU client who's talking about buying or selling a property, I will refer them back. This even happened for there was a realtor who it was a huge raving fan, and she had posted my information on Nextdoor. One of the neighbors was saying, who knows a good ADU contractor? And she said, call Florentine at Sidekick and post my information. And I had some people call me. Well, one of the clients in Hermosa Beach that we're now working with was talking about, hey, after we get our ADU built, we want to invest in our next property, and what do you advise? And I said, oh, I've got the best realtor for you. And basically we're able to refer her back, because I know who the agent was. When she had first come to me, she said she saw it on Nextdoor. I said, oh, who put that Nextdoor post up there? So I was able to capture the realtor's name and put it in our database. Now I have a client to refer back to that realtor.
It's all about networking.
What's that?
I said it's all about networking.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So to answer, that was a really bit of a detour, but basically $250 for you and for your clients.
Okay. Let's keep rolling on. It's about 12:22.
All right, great. So let's go back. Let's show the presentation. I'd like to give people a little bit of an idea of what this process is going to look like. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the process and some design considerations. What does it cost? I know everyone wants to know what is this thing going to cost. And my slides have kind of got escaped from me a little bit. All right. So in a nutshell, the process is that you're going to do your feasibility and your financing so that you know exactly what you can build. A lot of that feasibility we're covering in that initial consultation. Sometimes there will be additional things that we will recommend in terms of getting a site survey. Sometimes we'll recommend that people do a scope their sewer to see what the condition of their existing sewer line is, especially if they're wanting to tie in. So there's things like that we may look at. And then always financing. We want to make sure that people are ready to take on this project. Then we work on our plan. So usually it's taking us a couple of weeks to put our schematic drawings together. we review them with the client, we go back and forth, we get the drawings, you know, the way that the client wants them. Then we send it to engineering and Title 24 so that we can get those calculations done. So typically it's about 4 to 6 weeks that it's in our hands. Then it goes to the plan check and utility review. In some cases, not always. So the plan check and utility review is typically, I'm saying 30 to 60 days, sometimes it can be less. And then this should not be, how did we get 30 to 60 days? Yeah, so, well, your plan check should be up to 60 days, but I have to say, Rita, it's actually in some cases taken a little bit longer, and I just like to give people that reality check. Then we pull the permits and we do the construction. Now, one thing that we also provide is we do a pretty detailed estimate. So when we get to the point where we're submitting the plans to the planning department, we want people to know exactly what their costs are going to be, and we actually work with the client and have a pretty participatory process and them helping figure out what their project's going to cost. There's some costs that are just fixed costs that no matter what, it's going to, you know, they're what the building department requires, and the cost is what the cost is. But there are other areas where we can make decisions based on quality level of things like windows and doors, and then finish levels of your, you know, your tile, your flooring, your trim work, your fixtures, etc. So I'll show you, let me show you an example of what our a typical estimate looks like. People are always curious to see like what a construction estimate should look like. So let's see, I know I had one here. I have it right here. Hold on a second. All right, I'm going to stop share for just a second because I need to pull this. I just need to pull this up really quickly, just so I can give you a quick little idea of what does this actually look like. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just show you this to get a really good idea. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is what when we provide a construction estimate, once we've drawn up plans, we can really give you a good idea of what the actual costs are going to be. So this was a garage conversion in Hermosa Beach, total cost under $75,000. And you can see we break everything down, so you can see what an itemized breakdown for everything, so you know exactly what it is that you're paying for, right? And homeowners really like this because they see where the money's going, and then they can also make some decisions as they're looking at this. They can make decisions about what things they might want to upgrade or downgrade. And we usually can look at a budget and see where are some big ticket items that if you're wanting to save on cost, we can eliminate it. We can utilize a different option. So it's it keeps going and going and going. But I mean, it's a very detailed project estimate. A lot of companies will come out and just throw out a number and say it'll cost X amount, and then it ends up, you know, they end up doing change orders. Kind of what the game is in LA County is every contractor wants to have the lowest price so that they can get the job, right? Well, what typically happens more times than not is they get the price, and then they have change order upon change order upon change order for things that were not actually included in the project price, and it ends up costing more than what they estimate. And I've even talked to contractors who say that they estimate it for a price that they know they can't build it for, but they have to do it that way to get the job. The problem for the homeowner, though, is if they're trying to budget and finance for this and they don't get clear numbers for what it's going to cost, it can really cause a big problem for them. So that's why we provide this very detailed estimate. We work with the client on making choices that can have the project fit within their budget.
And do you base your estimates to reflect the actual construction cost for the area?
Yeah, so we actually use a technology that has pricing for that time in that area. And so if construction costs go up, for example, our numbers I noticed recently went up for one project compared to another project. I was like, oh wow, our cost per linear foot or our cost per square foot actually went up on some things. And that was reflective of what had changed in the construction landscape in that period of time. So yeah, everything is, it's not arbitrary. We're not throwing arbitrary numbers out. These are numbers that are all based on, you know, the costs of material and labor and construction in our local area. Typically, people need a rough idea of what a project's going to cost. I will provide a range in the beginning because people need to know, is it even worth pursuing getting plans drawn up? So I'll give people a range so that they know what to anticipate. But in terms of getting a real estimate, we really have to have the plans drawn so that we can plug all the numbers in and get that estimate drawn up. And every project's, you know, every project's different. Every project has its own idiosyncrasies. But that was just an example of one of the projects that we did. And then, you know, another thing that I just wanted to mention, because I've, you know, unfortunately, I a lot of times get calls when it's kind of too late for me to jump in and help somebody. And last, I think November or December, I had gotten a call from a man who had done a garage conversion, and his garage conversion had cost him over 2.5 times what he was initially quoted. So that's significantly different. So you can imagine the hardship that that homeowner likely experienced when they thought it was going to be one price, and then it was 2.5 times that price when all was said and done. And part of that is we have a lot of remodel contractors, people that are used to doing kitchen bath remodels, jumping into the ADU space. And this really is new build construction. You need people who have experience as a home builder doing new build construction, who really understand what the costs are. There are a lot of structural and utility costs that go into these projects. And then that same project, come to find out, who's trying to get the certificate of occupancy to rent it, they had never pulled permits. They had never gone through any inspections. So now this homeowner had paid all this money and pretty much in a lot of ways had to start from scratch, having things deconstructed so that the city inspectors could go in. I mean, it was just a huge mess. So just, you know, buyer beware. There's a lot of people jumping into the ADU space right now that, you know, you need to make sure they've got the right experience.
And just to kind of touch on the permit section, you know, just to clarify, even if you're converting a garage to a studio ADU, you still have to pull permits, correct?
Yeah, you've got to submit plans. You've got to go through permitting, even if you have it already built out, but it's unpermitted. You know, and that's something that we'll get into in the next class is what do you do when you have an unpermitted structure? Because there's a little bit of detail to that. But even for that, you're going to have plans drawn up and whatnot. You don't just go in and get someone's stamp of approval. There's an inspection process and you know, a process that you have to go through. So, but we can help people with those projects. Yeah. All right. Now, do you see my slides again?
Yes.
I'm gonna make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. All right, so oftentimes what I see is most common when people want to build an ADU, the first thing they do is they start looking up contractors and they want to call a contractor. There's not a lot a contractor can do for you without a set of plans. So there's actually a whole team that's going to work on your project. And so I like for people to get that there's a whole team of people that need to be working together when you're building an ADU. So it's really important to build your team. And that's going to include somebody on the team that knows ADUs and understands ADU law. That's going to be your lender, your designer, architect, your engineer, your Title 24 calculator, your permit processor. What's not on here is the city planning department. So you've got the planning department, you've got building and safety, public works. They're also part of our team. We don't get to choose who those team members are. Those are the team members we don't get to choose, but they are part of our team. There's your general contractor, your skilled specialty contractors, and then, you know, you really want to include who are my financial planners, who are my tax advisors, you know, am I going to have a property manager manage this project? So there's a lot of different people that need to come into this project. The one group that I just want to make mention of is your skilled specialty contractors. So Rita, right now there's a skilled labor shortage in our area. We have had a lot of contractors and skilled laborers retiring and not enough new coming into the trades. So if people have sons or daughters who are looking for good paying careers, the trades are a great opportunity right now. And then we also have a lot of really big infrastructure projects. So we've got a $6 billion airport renovation going on, a $3 billion stadium being built. We've got light rail lines, you know, to the tune of several billions of dollars going in. throughout LA County. And then we have a lot of, with the opportunity zones and a lot of incentives for builders to build multifamily dwelling, a lot of multifamily properties going up. So our labor pool is very, 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 very limited right now. So being able to get your skilled specialty contractors to show up and do good work on time when you need them to keep your project moving along is really, really huge. And it's something that I think a lot of people overlook when they're hiring their contractor is, what is the relationship that contractor has with their plumber, with their electrician, with their HVAC installer, right? And how quickly are they going to be able to get them out? How many years have they been in relationship with these skilled laborers? What is the, how much work are they giving them in a year, right? If they're giving them a lot of work, then these subcontractors are going to show up on their schedule first. When they're trying to juggle and balance projects, they're going to show up for that contractor that's giving them regular work than they are for the average homeowner that's calling them out for a one-off project, right? So these are just things a lot of people don't think about. I know you're getting a little bit of an earful, but these are the important things that impact someone's project that a lot of people, aren't necessarily thinking about. And then finding the right property, we'll look at this, but we'll go into this really in more detail at our next class. But there's just certain things that make a property more amenable to an ADU. So, watch out for coastal overlay zones. They oftentimes add a layer of, little bit, layer of complexity. But basically thinking about accessibility, is it on a corner lot? Is it face an alley? Those are typically prime for ADU. Is there at least a driveway that gets back there? What is the grading like on the property? Is the house easily dividable? Is it large enough and dividable that you could maybe have sometimes like the tall and skinnies in the coastal communities are a really great option for ADUs, where you can have an upstairs unit, downstairs unit. So you want to make sure that the rents support it, but pretty much rents will support an ADU anywhere. I haven't found a city yet where someone isn't cash flowing really well. So again, we'll get into more detail on this in a couple weeks.
Let me ask you this: are insurance companies, are they understanding the ADU? Because I've heard a lot of clients say that they're having trouble getting their ADUs insured.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I would say talk to me. I haven't been hearing that, so I would say come talk to me, and I can get you connected with some good insurance companies that can help you with getting your ADU insured. Yeah.
And do you have a list of like lender friendly ADUs for those loans?
You mean lenders that are good with ADU?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lender that I really love to use because she's very, very invested in ADUs. So I kind of have a favorite go-to lender, but yeah, I've got a few that are starting to get into the ADU world, both in the single family and the commercial properties as well.
And can you clarify the difference between the loan that someone would need? Is it a construction loan? Is it a renovation?
Yeah, so some people get the best, if somebody has equity, the cash out refi is typically the best way to go. Banks aren't really doing home equity lines of credit right now. A lot of banks aren't doing cash out refi. So a lot of times your Wells Fargo, your Chase, it might be hard to get a cash out refi right now, but so you might be going to your loan brokers who have different products, but either cash out refi or HELOCs even right now are harder to get, but renovation loans. So if someone doesn't have the equity, usually we're doing a renovation loan. Yeah. Were there other questions?
Yeah, if you want to we've got about 5 more on here. Let's see, from your graph, the ADU addition does not pay for itself until 20 years. Is that correct?
Nope. Usually the ADU is paying for, so what you might have seen on the graph that I did was that considered financing. So the net income had financing coming out. So that might have been what somebody was looking at. If it didn't cover the full cost, it might have considered that. When you just look at straight, what is the payments? What are the payments? When you apply the payments to what the cost of the ADU is, it almost always I haven't seen it go more than 8 years. So it almost always will pay for itself in at least 8 years.
Sure. And then Tony's asking, according to the slide, any multi-unit can build 2 detached ADUs regardless of the land size and parking restrictions. Is that correct?
Yes, regardless of lot size and parking restrictions, it's going to depend. So we have to look at that property and we have to see if they can get out from under the parking. There would be parking requirement. However, for example, if it's within a half a mile of public transit, then we wouldn't have to have the parking. So it depends on the specific property. But if you were to convert it to garages, that is correct. You do not have to replace the parking.
Perfect. We talked about setbacks, but what do you know about the landscaping drainage percentage that is required?
Yeah.
Does that certain percentage require at front yard and backyard affect an ADU compliance?
Yeah, so we do still have to honor all of the drainage requirements. So that is still something that will come into play for a new detached unit. Again, if you're building within an existing structure, it should not. And like I say, we did have a public works department recently that wanted us to do the lids report and the soils report. And it just wasn't warranted because we weren't changing any of the existing structures. But if you're building a new structure, yes, you still will have to comply with all of that.
Okay, and then we have Lisa is asking, I heard that the state law states that once you put an ADU on a property, anything you do in the future, like build a single family, you must also include an ADU. Is that true?
Okay, say that again.
1 second, let me go right back to it. Lisa's asking, basically, she heard a rumor that the state law requires that once you put an ADU would then always be required on the property, even if you're putting up a new single family. Is that true?
No, an ADU is not ever required on a property. No.
And
so
just,
I would have to see what someone's referencing. Maybe there's something that is being referenced that they might have gotten information from somebody who misunderstood something. I'd have to look back and see what they're referencing on that. But no one is requiring ADUs or requiring that once an ADU is built, it can never be removed. That the state law doesn't say anything about that.
Okay. Can an ADU be built less than 4 feet from a power line? A neighbor of my past client is building an ADU above garage with virtually no setbacks in the city of El Segundo.
That I wonder if it's been permitted, would be my question, because above, especially if it's above garage and close to a power line or a power pole, is it power line or power pole? If it's close, the power lines, the utilities are not as concerned about. It's more the poles, because that's where they need access to service their lines, is those power poles. So if it's a couple feet away from a power pole, second story, that will probably be problematic. And I would wonder if that project has been properly permitted.
Okay. When you are selling a home that has a detached ADU, do you include that square footage to the single family residence?
Yes. So that is now counted as residential dwelling space. Yes.
Okay. And then Doug's saying, you mentioned tall and skinnies and creating an ADU. In Redondo Beach, there are a lot of tall and skinnies. On a 2,500 square foot lot with livable space of 1,700 to 2,000 square feet, how would you convert this into a junior ADU, which needs a separate door? If possible, how do you max out the space to have 2 rental incomes out of 1 property?
That is a fantastic question, and I would need to come and check out that property specifically. But I'd be happy to do that for a $50 discount just for you. I'd be happy to do that to it.
It's a consult, Doug.
That's right.
And that's it for. Oh, we got another question here. Can you reiterate the guidelines or ordinances for owner-occupied and non-owner-occupied ADU, and about the liens?
About the lien.
I think we're referring back to the junior.
We're probably talking about deed restriction. Okay. So if a property is owner occupied, really, I think we were probably talking about junior. I don't know specifically what the question is. I know for a junior ADU, the property does have to be owner occupied, and there will need to be a deed restriction that will be filed on title. For a property that is an ADU, not a junior ADU, but an ADU, that project will not have to be owner occupied, and you will not have to have a deed restriction saying that the property is owner occupied. You may have to have a deed restriction saying that you won't rent it out for short-term rental. So there still may be deed restriction requirements, but there should not be a deed restriction against owner occupancy.
Okay.
Or non-owner occupancy. Yeah.
And that's it for the questions.
That's it for the questions. Fantastic. All right. So we'll talk for just a second about the site consult, when to order a property site consult. So obviously if someone's wanting to build an ADU, perfect time to do a site consultation and just understand what you can and can't do. It will really help people, number one, to understand if a project's feasible, to tease out what makes the most sense for their property, and then also to be armed with information that when they're going to the planning department, they'll know exactly what they can build and not build. Also, if you have a client that is looking to buy a property and they want to be able to build an ADU on that property, you may want to have me come out as soon as you open escrow. When you're doing all of those inspections, have me come out and do a consult for your client. That way you're not the one responsible for saying, yay, yes, this property looks like a great candidate for an ADU. You can take that liability off your hands and have me come in and actually do the report for you. When you're wanting to list a property that has good ADU potential, that's also a great time to have a property report. You can actually put that in your attachments on the MLS, so there's actually a report there. You can have it on site at the properties. People can review it and really know what their options are for being able to build an ADU. And then obviously, prior to getting estimates for designing and building an ADU, really important to know exactly what you can build. I did have somebody I had done a consultation with. He didn't want to move forward with our company. He had someone else do the plans. They submitted it to City of Lomita, only to find out they couldn't build what they thought they wanted to build. He wanted to do an ADU and a junior ADU and a detached garage, and he couldn't do that. But he went with a design build company that had done several ADUs. But they didn't know the ADU law. And so then he had to go back and have all of his plans redrawn again. So I think it's really smart before you actually start designing and building to really understand what you can and can't do on that property. And then any other questions?
I'm not seeing any come through. If you guys have any final questions, here we go. There are a restriction in the beach cities about short-term Airbnb. Can an ADU be an Airbnb?
Not if there's a restriction against them. And most cities will have a restriction around building an ADU for short-term rental purposes, because what we have to understand is that all of the laws surrounding ADUs were put in place basically to encourage the development of housing, right? So we're trying to create like housing for renters, not necessarily more hotel or hospitality type spaces. So the state is allowing you to get away with not having to meet your typical setbacks, not having to meet your parking requirements, not having to meet certain height restrictions. There's a lot of restrictions that the state is saying, if you build housing, because we so desperately need housing, you don't have to meet all of these restrictions that your city might otherwise place on you. They're not doing that so that people can have short-term rentals. So if you're going to call it an ADU, it really is not intended for short-term rental. It's for creating housing.
Perfect. And do you just want to give everybody a shout out, like with your contact info, your website, maybe your email address?
Yeah, let me, I'll take you to my website real quick so that you can take a peek at it.
Perfect. Everybody take a screenshot.
Then I can help people to be able to access the information so that they can get the slide deck here. So we're gonna go to.
And as you're pulling that up, I just want to mention again that Florentine will be back on June 25th for another deep dive workshop style into really how to be an ADU pro. And with all this information I've downloaded today, I am super excited to see even more info from you. You definitely are an expert in this.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely love what I do. I love being in the ADU space, love being in the ADU world, and I'm happy to share what I know. So, so this is just our website. It's sidekick.homes. So if you go to sidekick.homes, you'll find us. And then for anybody that wants all of this information so that you can reference it yourself, you want all the 2020 updates. If you just go on our website, you can click anywhere, click any one of these, get help with my project planning. And all it will do is just have you enter your information in, and just put in the information. There's a section for notes. Just say, Florentine, I want the 2020 updates for ADUs. And then I'll know that you're a realtor, and you'll get just specific realtor information from me. But feel free to just go ahead and just click on that, and I'll get you your information. I am working on having a special realtors only portion of the website with some really great resources just for realtors, because I know that you guys are just, you're forward facing, you're out with the clients all day and every day. So we definitely want to make sure that you're taken care of. So you can just click, there's different links throughout. Ready for your design proposal. Any of these will send me a message. Click on any of those, and then I'll make sure that I get you your 2020 updates. I'll get it out to everybody. There was one other thing you know what? While we've got just a few minutes, I just want to show you this real quick, because a lot of people really love this, Rita. This is just a look at we have a project management platform for our clients, so that once we actually are under construction, they can see exactly what's going on. This is kind of a little dummy page. So this isn't a real project, but it just shows you what we can do. So we can upload photos. So you can see exactly what's going on with your project. We can see where are we in terms of the project budget compared to where we are currently with our price. We've got a schedule, so everyone can be on the same page with what the construction schedule is. If we fall behind schedule, everyone sees what's going on. All the contractors, subcontractors, homeowners, everyone's on the same page. We see what's going on with the weather. Is there upcoming weather that might impact the project? If we have any change orders, we're able to upload those here. We're able to send invoices, etc. So it's not something that a client has to log into. If they want to do everything via phone and email, we can do that as well. But a lot of people really love being able to tap into their project and see exactly what's going on with it. So I thought I would show that. People really love seeing this, that, oh, great, there's an organized way that my project's going to be handled, and I can actually tap in and be a part of that.
Very organized, very transparent. I love it all. And just to clarify again, it's sidekickhomes.com, correct?
It's sidekick.homes. So there's
sidekick.homes.
Yep. It's just sidekick.homes. Nice and simple.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I think we could wrap it up for today. And again, look forward to seeing you back here in 2 weeks. And yeah, loved all the questions from everybody. We had quite a lot of info to download.
Great questions. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Rita.
Everybody.
Bye, Nikki.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.